and welcome to the Pragmatic Product Chat series, where we tackle the biggest challenges facing today's product management, product marketing, and other market and data-driven professionals with some of the best minds in the industry. I'm Rebecca Calageras for Pragmatic Institute, your host for this episode. Okay, so today we have a little bit of a different take on a guest. What happens when a brilliant tech founder suddenly becomes the CEO? Some of you may work for people like this and realizes that they're in over their head. Well, today's guest, Pete Steege, knows that story well. He's a B2B growth strategist and founder of B2B Clarity, where he helps accidental CEOs, those technical expert turned leaders, gain clarity, build trust, and scale smart. And one of the reasons I have him on today is that I know for two things, right? There's a lot of listeners here, a lot of you listening, who come from an engineering background, right? Who maybe moved into product management after spending the first part of their career as engineers, as programmers. And I also know that there's a lot of you listening who have, your eyes, your desires on the CEO seat. We think of ourselves often as the CEO of the product, though that can be controversial. So I think there's a lot here that kind of Pete talks about in his work, and lots of years that his decades of experience can really help us in terms of practical insights on growth, leadership, and doing business on purpose. So welcome, Pete.
Thank you, Rebecca. It's so great to be here.
All right. So Pete, one of the things I always like to ask our guests is their origin story, right? How did you get where you are today? Why are you so passionate about what it is that you do?
Well, I'll say, first of all, it's going to be very similar to what you just described, what we're going to talk about today. I myself have been on that journey from starting in the technical world and became, other parts of the business. I'm actually a rewired engineer. I spent the first part of my career building things, and I loved it. I'm an electrical engineer by training, and the clarity of technical challenges was really satisfying for me. You follow the data, solve the issue, and then you move on. It was very clean and predictable, mostly predictable. At least that's how I felt then. And as my career progressed, I started to do other things like marketing, product marketing, other kinds of marketing, leadership, and I moved around to different size companies as well. And suddenly things weren't as clear anymore. Went from designing systems to growing businesses, from logic to emotion. And what I realized, sometimes painfully, is that growth and leadership are not direct extensions of technical expertise. They're a completely different thing. And that shift, being good at the work but unprepared to grow a business, is what I now call an accidental CEO. And I use that really as a lot in my business, that term. Those are the people that I work with. It's where so many brilliant founders and technical experts find themselves.
Absolutely. And I think we all see that play out, right? Sometimes in our own career, but certainly in peers, where you see just incredible individual contributors who get promoted to a layer of management and leadership where that's just completely outside their known skill set. Now, sometimes, again, I think we forget that being an individual contributor is also a perfectly wonderful thing to do. We all need super, incredibly strong individual contributors. But too often people are promoted or thrust in that case, right? In the case of you found your company and there isn't really enough work done to help develop that, right? Same thing as a product manager, right? We always talk about those who become, the VPs of product and eventually pass there into CEOs aren't those who write the best requirements, right? They don't have the oh my gosh, your user stories are perfection, right? That's not the promotion piece. It is all of the other side of it. It's the understanding the business. It's the influence, the leadership pieces. And I think that's what you're finding the same way, right? You've got founders who have an amazing idea, but they're not going to be able to scale that and to build a business unless they can really think about the problems a little bit differently. And to your said, there's some sort of when we think of intrinsic parts of people who are attracted to engineering, right? Who have the logic, who really like the logic and are very good at it and the black and white, that may make it sometimes a little more difficult or at least less native for them when they start to do some of these other things. So I think this is great ground. Well, let's start a little bit like talking about, let's just expand on that. Sort of the big challenges that you had, but also that the sort of individuals that you work with struggle with.
Sure. So for these accidental CEOs, one of the first things that that they're challenged with is, and you mentioned it, it's their perspective, where they're coming from. They're true champions of this product. Often they created the business themselves, right? They might be the founder, or they could have come into the business, but they have this passion for this thing they're making and how valuable it is, how great it is. The problem is, from that perspective, they bring their focus tends to be too much on, let me tell you how it works. It's so true, right? That it's awesome and it's great. But the problem is, in this new role, they have to shift to be changed and help the company shift to be about how it's valuable and who it's valuable for as the story, the main story. And so often they haven't done the work beyond. They're over rotated on the capabilities of their company, and not prepared and not clear on exactly who it is that would benefit most from this product. I like to say, and from a product marketing standpoint, there's target markets, right?
Yep.
And a lot of people will do that work. I like to talk about bullseye markets, right? Who are the people that are the absolute sweet spot, the ones that when you envision this company or this product that you dreamed of helping the world, these are the people that are right at the center of that benefit, right? Those are the ones that you have to really be clear on for this all to work.
I think that this is, again, we're going to kind of drive these parallels throughout the conversation, because not only do I see this in the external CEOs, a lot of people listening, if you took just a minute and really reflected on the last time you talked about your product to your sales team, did you talk about the value it delivered and the problems it's solving and for whom? Or were you super excited about the new technology that came in, right? It is something that as a product people, we have to check ourselves on all the time. Because if we're not talking about the value it delivers and the problems, if that's not the way we're framing it, none of the people down the road, right? Down the road towards the market, right? The marketing people, the sales people are going to have that ability to reflect that out. And it is a huge limiting factor. It's the same thing. So there's that talking about it in sales perspective, but it's the same thing when we're talking about trying to get buy-in from leadership for funding or for attention, right? Or for resources, right? It's the same thing if I'm telling, but we have to have, 5 developers because I really have to have widget 1 in there by Q1. That's great. But this person over here is telling me they have $1 million contract they're going to get, right? So if I am not, again, bringing value up into my organization in order to get the resourcing and attention I need, if I'm not having that conversation, then I am not serving my product well. So again, that is very similar to what you're saying. Is it's so easy for us to get so geeked out, excited about like how amazing the product is and what it does from our perspective and from the technology perspective, that it can be difficult to flip.
I would add that it also helps, and I totally agree. It's a universal, really. It's a dynamic. It's a human dynamic. It also plays in for product leaders as well as CEOs when it comes to leading their team. The why, right? The engagement of your employees is just as important as the engagement of your customers, and all the more when you're growing a business. So if we're talking about a tech business that's scaling, one of the biggest challenges that I hear from CEOs is the pain of success. That you may have a team of 10 to start, a squad, right? And everybody's on board and we're eating pizza every night and all that. Well, when you get to 50 or 100, what worked to be together and engaged in a unit at 10 no longer works, right? And it starts unraveling. And this focus on the purpose, the value, and why we're doing this, the CEO by bringing, or product leader, by bringing everyone back to that touchstone, that's how they can keep things moving forward, unified, aligned, right, and engaged.
Right. You often hear, I'll talk to people who are product managers and they're frustrated because they have all these things they need to get done and they don't have the authority, right? They don't have the title that lets them, they're not, dictators. But I think it's also important to remember that the CEO has the title, but it still is about getting people on board, right? You can't dictate passion and understanding and contextual grounding brings just a higher level of work product from people. Totally. And so focusing on the why we're here, why we're doing what we're doing, who we're doing it for is just got to be critical.
Totally agree.
All right. So we talked about the passion for the product and getting a little too attached to the tech talk. We talked about making sure we're talking about the why. What other pitfalls or common challenges do you find with your accidental CEOs?
Well, you mentioned the why, and if you're familiar with Simon Sinek and the start with why, that's totally in this idea for sure. There's another book that he wrote called The Infinite Game that is I bring that up because that's kind of another aspect that gets in the way, and that is the mistake of thinking of these goals in front of you as a zero-sum game or as a contest to win now. CEOs, accidental CEOs that succeed are the ones that realize that if they're purpose focused, their success isn't about this year's revenue goal or winning this big client. Those have to be viewed as steps to the ultimate goal, which is this mission that you're on, right? To make the world a better place in however you define it with the product you've created or the service you've created. And so back to purpose and meaning, which is really my theme in a lot of my work. It sometimes sounds wishy-washy or too abstract to product-originated leaders, but in fact, it's the most potent and lasting dynamic in their ability to drive a product forward or lead a business to grow, because it survives that next success. It doesn't change once you reach that intermediate milestone. That purpose remains evergreen, right? It keeps you driving forward.
Well, and you hinted at something that I agree with you. I think a purpose and understanding it and sharing it is critical. I think some people find them they've seen everyone's mission and vision statement and don't know how to translate that into the world. So what makes a good vision for you? Like, where does it go from, oh, that's fluffy and nice, to, oh, wow, that was the powerful vehicle that really helps us understand the sort of North Star we're heading towards?
So clarity is the first thing I'm going to say, being clear. My company is called B2B Clarity, and my new book is called Radical Clarity, because I just see this as the essence of success. So what I mean by that is, and this is particularly true for product-originated leaders, accidental CEOs, there's many more situations where the issue is not it's not that they're missing something. It's that they're doing too much. They're trying to do too much or say too much or be too much. And I've found success comes first from turning things down. So it starts with finding what I call their true story. And that might be their why. You might call that their why or their product market fit or their brand. I mean, those are all kind of different flavors of that same core truth that is what you're about, that we've already been talking about, that drives this meaning, right? And when I work with clients to get to that true story, because often they don't have that. They're so busy making the product, right? To get to that true story, it starts with clarity. It starts with clearing the decks and having a conversation without all the noise, without the activity. It's not about the activity. what's not what we're doing today. It's who we are and why we're here, right? So we start with that. I have an exercise called the truth chain, which helps us. We talked about that bullseye target market, that bullseye customer. It's a chain, and that's one end of the chain. The other end of the chain is this business you created. And to tell the story, back to what we were saying earlier, so often these leaders will try to shortcut that and go from, this is what we do, Mr. Customer, Miss Customer, and that won't be heard. So we build a chain to give them a story that's relevant and clear. And so what it does is it starts with that customer, that bullseye customer, and we say, okay, that's who they are. Now, what are those burning issues that keep them up at night that we can help with, right? That's a pretty standard conversation in product work. But we figure out. It should be. It's not common, right?
Let me be honest. It should be. We teach that very much, but yes.
Right. So we get that. That gets us a step closer. From our business, we say, okay, this is who we are, what we're off to do. What are our 3 superpowers? What are the things we do that collectively, those 3 things, nobody else can claim, right? That's how we do the thing that we are. And now you are one step away, because now you've got what their problem is and what your abilities are, capabilities. It might be product, it might be support, it might be our team, right? It could be all those things.
It's what we call distinctive competencies, right?
Great.
Those things that you're good at that are unique, hard for someone else to copy. They're valued by the market. You've got proof of them. And to your point, it's that hotspot is that intersection between what the market needs and what you're good at.
Exactly. And that's the final link in the chain, is taking those distinctive competencies and then taking the problems that are relevant that they have. And then now you build a story of how I can help you with that, right? How we can help you with that problem. That is the core, that's the nugget of truth of your true story, right? That is why you're here. And they don't want to hear why you were founded. They don't want to hear the capabilities of your team. They don't want to hear the features or capabilities or benefits of your product. They first need to hear, I can help you with that. And here's the help I can provide you. Here's how it will be better, which gives you their attention now and their commitment enough for you to tell them, explain to them, well, how can you do that, right?
Right.
So that true story, that process tends to be the first thing, right? The first truth, the first valuable thing for them working together. Because once they have that, a lot of our conversation already, Rebecca, has been about using that. That's the anchor, that's the foundation, right? That they can anchor on in everything that happens in the future. They don't have to worry about when the new product comes out in 6 months, rejiggering everything, or when the competition changes, or when the market's landscape is different. There will be an evolution, but if you've gotten to that truth, the real truth, it will be able to withstand almost every change.
And it sounds like this story, which is very similar to what we think of as positioning, is something that is both core to how you talk to the market, but it sounds like you're also saying it's core to how you lead internally.
Yes, how you lead internally, how you talk to the market, how you design your product, how you set up your operations, and maybe really importantly from a CEO standpoint, how you choose the priorities for your organization. Because back to the clarity thing, clarity is important from a messaging standpoint, but it's just as important from a company prioritization standpoint, an activity level. Marketing is poster child for this. So easy to spin up a new marketing tool.
Oh gosh, there's no shortage of things one could do.
Yes.
And you always feel like you should be doing more. Like whatever you're doing, you're clearly missing out on this other thing that you wish you could do. Yes.
So when I work with clients, we end up after this process, we end up with a focus of 2, maybe 3, initiatives that are the priorities for moving things forward, and try really hard you can't turn everything off, but certainly deprioritize things that aren't those three things. So that while you may have other work, it's the idea of rocks, right? You may have other work, but we're going to talk about how we're doing on these three things a lot more. And, that's what the meetings will be about. That's what the dashboards will report on versus the dozens of things that are on them today.
Yeah. So, so when we're thinking about the story, we talked about like understanding your distinctive competency, understanding the market problems. Is there a format to the story that you do, right? Like what are the elements that make a good story besides those two pieces, or a format? Or is it not about that? Is it really just about understanding those sort of core building blocks?
That format is important, but it's not, I would say I view that as a operational step after we do what I see is the truly important part, which is this true story. And I find that it's not a tagline, but I find that when it's really successful, it's 3 words or 5 words or 2 words that when those words are uttered to to those bullseye customers, their ears perk up right away and they say, "Oh my gosh, I get it. Where the heck have you been? You are exactly, I've been waiting for you forever," right? That's the magic, because from there, and I understand there's a lot of different thoughts on how you take that nugget of truth and make it actionable. I view that as another step in the operations. And I believe the focus, what I focus mostly on is first identifying those 2 to 3 words. And then we for each business is different as far as how what they need to do to actualize that.
And how to prioritize those. Yeah.
Yep.
When you think about the other thing that I see a lot in some of your writings and thinking is about leadership itself. And having that vision and sharing it consistently, right? I mean, here's the other thing I think as product people and CEOs, we forget. We're like, we have laid out the vision. Obviously, people will tattoo that on their arm and remember it. And I don't have to keep grounding us in there. That's just not true, right? We need to ground. But what other aspects of leadership do someone sort of who accidentally tripped in this, although I think this probably is true for lots of leaders, what other items do you find that your accidental CEOs struggle with leadership, or just opportunities that you really help them to strengthen that aspect?
Yeah, leadership is it's one of the tent poles here for sure. And one of the things we end up focusing on with leadership, once we get beyond the thing you mentioned, but let me first talk about that a little more. This idea of the CEO's primary job is the keeper of the flame. Nobody else is going to keep bringing the business back to this simple truth. And they need to beat the drum over and over and over again. And in the same way that in marketing, marketers are told, you know what, you got to keep saying your message beyond to where for yourself, you feel like you're being very repetitive because you're hearing it internally over and over again. I'm sick of this message. Whereas in the market, they're just getting it when you say it that often, right? It takes time.
And for product managers, right? When you're a lot of our clients, we have multiple product lines, right? So you are championing your product line in that organization, and you have to keep that flame. You have to keep them grounded because many of the resources you work with are working on multiple products.
Exactly.
So they're coming in and out of different people's stories. So that repetition, that grounding, again, to your point, you're going to be like, oh my God, they must be so tired of me saying this, but they're just getting it. And they also they're hearing other people's messages in the interim.
Yep. So the CEO's job one is clarity about the mission we're on here, right? And the value we provide and who we provide it to, those simple things. But beyond that, so now let's say that's successful. You've found those 2 to 3 words. You've lit the flame. The market gets it. You're standing out. You're growing. You're scaling. That's where the leadership challenges that I help CEOs with kind of shift to a little bit more operational or real functional things. One example is decision making. One thing that's really common for accidental CEOs in the leadership spot is as they grow, the beginning, they made all the decisions, all the important decisions.
Command and control, right?
That doesn't scale.
Yeah.
Right?
Nope.
And it fails in two ways as companies grow, in my opinion. One way is that they continue to try to hold on to that and they become a bottleneck. And people become disengaged too, right? Because they don't have agency. The other way it fails is the CEO goes too far the other way and chaos ensues because everybody's making decisions and they're not aligned and they're stepping on each other, right? It's a free-for-all. So one way we talk about this, I have a framework called the impact matrix. And the two axes are, one is decision-making. Is it unipolar or is it multipolar? Is one person making all the decisions or is everybody making all the decisions, right? Is it decentralized? And then the other side of that is empowerment. Am I empowering is my culture empowering the team or is it, not giving them the power? So if you look at that matrix, the state where that doesn't scale is when the CEO maintains that unipolar decision-making. And if he doesn't empower the team, they're helpless, right? They just tell us what to do, and there's paralysis. If he does empower them and maintains all of the control, that doesn't work either. But if he says, everybody, you can make the decisions, then that's the chaos. The trick is to maintain that there needs to be one person making decisions. But you know what? It's not going to always be me as that one accountable person. So that's the magic balance. I'm going to decide, team, we're going to agree. These are going to be my decisions. So-and-so manager, you own this other decision. So it's not a free-for-all. It's still one person's decision, but you're distributing the authority, right? And the accountability as well. That's the power of it. When it's owned by a single person, they can be accountable for that decision. So that's something we work with a lot, is the balance of that and how you navigate that over time. I'm not going to say it's clear and easy, but that is a dynamic that has to be addressed.
It's interesting. It reminds me of two things that we talk about. One is empowering. We're frequently talking about development teams, right? And how specific do I need to give my instructions to the development team, right? And we are of the belief that you want to empower your development teams who have an enormous amount of skills to solve the problem. But you have to do that. You have to provide context. And it's going to be the same thing for the CEO. If even for those that I bequeath the power to make certain decisions, all of those decisions are going to be made better as long as we have context. And that, I think, is partly what you're talking about with the story, right? But understanding the context of the story and who we are, and also the business reality, or in our case, understanding who we're solving problems for, what are the real life constraints of those, all of that context allows us to empower others to make decisions. And the other thing, to your point, it's never black and white. There's not like a prescriptive answer that says, well, so in this role should solve these kind of decisions and this role should do. But the effort of having the conversation is critical, right? We do it with a gap analysis where we go through all the different parts, right? Just acknowledging it. And it can be different in each organization. So it can change over time. But like really being intentional about the conversation, I think is important. And it's too easy to assume that someone will or won't or do or don't, right? And so that effort is really important.
Can I share another important leadership tool that I work with them on? It's called zero culture. Now that sounds terrible, I think.
It does sound terrible. I'm like, no, thank you.
But I like that because it gets people attention. This is back to that clarity and the power of less being more from a leadership standpoint. This challenges CEOs to think about it kind of an extreme way, a different way of looking at their business and how to grow it and manage it. And the idea is this. One simple way to describe success for a tech business that's growing is there are two things that you need to do as a CEO and your business needs to do. Number one is find your truth.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about that. You know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
Number two is get out of the way.
Yeah.
You can take a view of this. Maybe it's a thought exercise for you, but you can look at your whole business, every single thing you and everyone on your team does, and every investment you make. And rather than say, what should we add? What new campaign should we do? What new product should we make? Rather, use a customer journey process, which I do a lot, and I know you do too, to say, what is getting in their way? Where is the friction? What's preventing our truth from being realized in the hands of our customers? And just view everything you do and every dollar you spend and every person you hire in terms of what of all this is slowing down or making it difficult or adding friction or blocking that goodness from happening. So zero culture is viewing your company and saying, what can we remove? What are the complex acronyms we're using? What are the wordy website pages that could be a demo? What are the customer service processes that are complex? What are the shipping efficiencies that could be, inefficiencies that could be removed, right? So it's a different, rather than positive, it's pulling away, and it's really saying, we're going to really believe in the value that we're talking about. We're going to actually act on it. We're going to say, you know what? If we just got stuff out of the way, the power, the physics of business will draw that value. Our customers will flock to us because we've removed either the lack of awareness, the difficulty, all the issues, the uncertainty, the vagueness. All of that is things to remove.
I love that. And it's twice you've talked about that. When you're also talking about clarity and focus, I do think lots of people, and definitely product people, feel like we can solve all problems by adding, right? Adding features, adding steps, adding people, right? When we're thinking about leadership perspective. And I think it's important to think about, who do we subtract?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why I wrote the book, right? Radical Clarity is a lot about this idea of removing and getting really clear on your truth.
When we say less is more, we actually really do mean it.
I mean it for sure.
Yes. All right. Okay. We talked about lots of different things. Is there two things that you would want listeners to do differently tomorrow based on what we talked about today?
The first thing would be you don't need my help to think about what your truth is, right? What is the true story for your business? And that means start with, who is that bullseye customer and how do we help them, right? So that's the first thing I would encourage them to do. And then the second thing would be to remember, it's not about you. It's about how you can help your client. Your client doesn't care about you, and your team doesn't really care about you. They want to know how you can help them succeed, right? So the more you can realize it's not about me, the better off you will be on your journey, whether you're currently in product, whether you're starting a company, whether you're scaling a business.
Absolutely. All right. If people wanted to learn more about you, about Radical Clarity, where should we send them?
I have some great bonus free resources for anybody that wants them.
Love it.
And I created a page just for your listeners. It's on my website at b2b-clarity.com/chat. And that page is just for you guys.
Love
and
it.
So I hope you check it out. And there's a one thing you might really appreciate is there's an online assessment called the Accidental CEO Audit. They'll give you in real 5-10 minutes. Will give you a customized report on what's your challenge that in this space.
Love it. Love it. I will definitely send people there. All right. Thank you so much for joining us, Pete. This was a really fantastic conversation. I appreciate it.
I'm so glad I could come, Rebecca. Thanks for inviting me.
All right, that does it for today's episode. Thanks everyone for listening. And don't forget to join us next week when we tackle another great topic designed to help you elevate your product, your company, and your career.